In this video, I'm going to share with you how to cut fabric with your Cricut Maker. So, I have a few things here that are handy to have or needed when you're working with fabric in the Cricut Maker. The first thing I have is just some cotton, 100% cotton fabric that we're going to be cutting today. I have a pink fabric mat. It's come in both 12 by 12 and 12 by 24. Usually I use the 12 by 24. That's my favorite size to use. And then I also have my Cricut or a self-healing cutting mat here. That's this one here. I have a ruler that I need to measure and cut my fabric. I have a rotary cutter here to cut the fabric. I have my brayer or roller to adhere the fabric to my mat. And then I have a pair of tweezers to remove the fabric from your mat. Now it's recommended that you do not touch your mat with your fingers in the 12-inch square or where the sticky part is of your mat. So always when you don't have a cover on it, handle it in the corner, up here, down the sides, but try to refrain from touching in the mat because the oils from your finger actually make the mat less sticky. So in today's pattern, what I'm cutting is I'm cutting a mask. So I have 100% cotton material here. It comes folded from the fabric store in half with the selvage side. This is the side that they don't cut, matching. Here's my raw edge. That's the side that's cut. And the grain of the fabric runs from raw edge to raw edge. The cross grain runs from selvage to selvage. Now you can cut your fabrics when you're using for crafting needs in either direction. It does not matter. You do not need to follow the grain of the fabric as long as you are cutting along the grain or along the cross grain. If you cut it a diagonal, which is called the bias of a fabric, this causes the fabric to have give and stretch. So when you pull it, you can see how it's stretching. If I pull the way of the fabric, there's less stretch. The way of the grain or cross grain or the way of the grain, there is less stretch. So you want to make sure that you keep your fabrics in that direction when you're cutting it. Now another thing I like to do is I like to cut my fabric generally in a 12-inch wide by the width of the fabric. Now this will also be determined based on the print that you have. This is what they call an all-around print. In other words, these little mermaids are turned every which way, so it really doesn't matter whether I cut my pattern out either with the grain or across the grain. Excuse me. So I am going to cut a 12-inch width of this fabric. So I love the Cricut ruler because it measures 12 inches by 24, which is the size of the large mat. So what I do is I line up my fabric with this edge here. Both of these are matching. Then I lay my ruler on top and I make sure that the lines are straight across at the edge here. So that is exactly perfect from this end to this end. You can see the fabric doesn't twist or move. And I'm going to line it across the top. Don't know if you can see, but the fabric here, let me try to move my camera a little bit so you can see. Fabric's been cut at a wonky angle, so I need to square that up. So that's what I'm doing right now. I am cutting down both sides of the 12-inch ruler on either side to get a piece that will be 12-inch wide by the width of the fabric. That's what cutting it in this direction is called. So I am going to cut off this side here. Now keep your fingers away from the rotary cutter. These blades are extremely sharp and they can cause some serious damage. I say, and my blade actually probably needs to be changed because it has a little glitch in it where it doesn't like to cut the fabric. So I need to hit this with scissors so that it will cut this across in straight line down the side. Okay, so that side is now cut and squared up. So I'm just gonna lay my ruler down nice and square on all those sides. And now I'm gonna cut down this other edge. And I'm putting pressure on my mat so it doesn't shift. And like I said, I'm coming in here and just snipping these little areas where my rotary blade is dull and won't cut through it. Okay, so now we have a piece of fabric that is cut 12 inches wide. It is cut so it will be laying on the mat when this is opened up. It will be 12 inches wide to go side to side on my mat. Ooh, sorry about that jingle there. So I am going to square off this top also because this is the selvage. You do not want to be using that in your material, in your project, because it is like a double weave through there and it is thicker. Plus it has little puncture holes in it. And it's just not an attractive piece of fabric to use. So again, I cut off one of the selvage edges. Now I'm going to take this over to my ironing board and iron my fabric nice and smooth. And I'll be back and we're going to go ahead and put this on the mat. Okay, so I iron my fabric so it's nice and flat. I say I have a new pink mat that I just started using this month. And I like to mark my clear covers with the date, so I have an idea about how long these guys are lasting. Just more out of curiosity. So this is cut the 12-inch wide across here by the total length or the width of the fabric. So I'll show you my way of working with fabric. Now, this particular pattern is I really needed only 8 inches wide. So under normal circumstances, I wouldn't cut this 8 inches wide. But, cut this 12 inches wide because you're going to end up with some excess fabric. But for demonstration, I'm using it 12 just to show you how this works. So I have put the material right side down against my mat, and the reason I did that is I want to use the washable Cricut fabric pen to mark my seam allowances. I want to show you how to do that in your machine. So I have the fabric right side down. I'm now using my brayer roller. If you don't have one of these, that's fine, but it really does help on keeping the fabric secure to your mat. You can use a rolling pin. You could just press down firmly with your hands. Make sure that you get your fabric nice and smooth on your mat. All right, so now we're ready to go. I'm going to take this over to my Cricut and we'll give this a cut using the rotary blade. All right, so I loaded my mat into my Cricut Maker. You can see in slot A, I have the water washable pen. In slot B, I need to change this fine point blade out, the bonded one, and put in my rotary blade. So that just pops right in, put the gears so they line up, and snap that in. And now I have a rotary blade in slot B, and I have the water washable pen in slot A. And my fabric is wrong side up so that I can see my sewing seam allowance markings that the pen will draw. So my light is flashing. I have my Cricut design space on my computer, on the mat that's the cutting mat. I've selected my fabric type that I'm cutting. I selected medium fabric like cotton, because that's what this exactly is. And now we are ready to go. And because I cut this the width of my fabric, I have a long tail of fabric that's hanging off the end of my mat, and that's okay. Just pulls in and goes out just with the mat, just like if it was stuck on the mat, and it's draping down onto the floor. So it has drawn my seam allowance. Now it's going, I'm going to cut it with a rotary blade. All right, so it is finished cutting. It's going to realign itself at the top. Sorry, I keep on hitting that too. So now I'm going to eject it. I'm going to move this up so you can see. Here's what I'm talking about. See my length of fabric hanging off the mat here? And that's okay, because now I'm going to show you how I handle all this. So the cut's done, and I'm going to move over back to my self-healing mat area to remove this. All right, so I'm back over at my mat now. Now, to remove this, start at a corner of your mat. I'm holding, again, not in the area that's sticky, and pulling off at a diagonal. Just comes off so much easier if you pull it at a diagonal. And just like that, now I have removed that, and I am left with my cut of my pattern. So I'm taking my tweezers, gently putting this under the corner. Again, removing it at an angle, it just comes off easier. And there you go. It is now off my mat. Now you can see that I got a lot of little tails here, and don't worry about that. This is an inexpensive cotton fabric, so that happens. Just is a lousy weave on it. It's a looser weave. So now to put this fabric back on for my second cut, let me move my mat out of the side because I don't want to be working on that. So here is my material with the cut out. So now all you have to do each time is you need to just square this up. And let me get my ruler here and my rotary cutter. And again, we're just going to square this up now. And it'll be ready to go right back on the mat without having to cut out a whole new piece. Just that simple. Squared up again, just like it was initially. Don't worry about these little loose pieces of thread on your mat. Those don't interfere with the cutting. So we're going to line this up again across the top and down the side. And again, I'm just going to gently push this on with my hands at first. Then I'm going to take my brayer and roll my fabric down so it's nice and firm against the mat. And then you just take this back over to your maker and slip it in, and it's ready to go for the second piece of this, and what I'm doing, a face mask. So that's how you cut fabric on your mats with your Cricut Maker. And the pink mat is designed especially for fabric. It can be used both with an Explorer and with the Cricut Maker. It doesn't matter. It's really designed for the rotary cutter on the Cricut Maker. And thank you.